Hello and welcome aboard the Talkin Texans podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube for ESPN 97.5. I'm Paul Gallant, host of the Paul Gallant Show, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. He is DJ Bien-Aime. He is the Houston Texans beat reporter for ESPN. Another slow week, DJ, but we have been hearing some people weigh in on the Texans from afar. And I figured after we talked about CJ Stroud, whether or not he could be rookie of the year in his first year, we talked about maybe the second most important figure in Houston after the quarterback. It's the new head coach, it's D'Amico Ryan. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show, Robert Mays, Nate Tice, and they were talking about some of the first-year head coaches going into this season and what would define success for all of them. D'Amico Ryans, it was outlined as, hey, look, you're just looking for some sort of competence out of Ryans. I figured we could dive a little bit deeper because I think that's been the general conversation that anyone who wants to enjoy the Texans this coming season, what they've said, we just want some form of competence. But for you, DJ, what defines success for the Texans head coach this coming season?
Success. I would say, getting 6 wins. That'll be success. That's one aspect of success because the over under is 5.5. So they get 6 or 7. They shot over the expectation from Vegas. That's one. Two, he revamps, like he shows signs of revamping the defense. Like if they go from a bottom 3 unit to middle of the pack, cool. That means your coaching is starting to transition or translate into your players, and they're starting to believe and they're starting to execute what you're teaching them. Because again, this roster defensively is not bad. It's probably there's some pieces they can still add. It's probably like middle of the pack, just from a talent perspective on paper, but it's not bottom 3. Like you have your secondary that's pretty. I don't want to say loaded, but you have everything you need. You got the young, talented guys, the veterans. You have a D line that has Jerry Hughes, Sheldon Rankins, Will Anderson. Your linebacking core. Technically, you have 2 former Pro Bowlers, but we got to see Denzel Perryman can stay healthy and see just what his fit is in this system from a sideline to sideline standpoint, coverage standpoint. But he's known as a downhill linebacker that can, rack up a lot of tackles, especially behind the line of scrimmage. But can you get this defense to go from a team that couldn't really generate that many sacks because they were mid towards like 20-ish. They terrible about the run. They gave the 6th most rushing yards in NFL history to over 2,800. Can you fix that? And can you continue the ascension of the defensive secondary, which was the only unit the entire last year that had more interceptions than allowed touchdowns? So those are things on the defensive side. Now, offensively, can you help create an offense? Because at the end of the day, even though he's not the offensive coordinator, it's still his offense, regardless. Like, yeah, you have the offensive coordinator, but you're the overseer of all that. You're the CEO. Can you have a competent offense that can be in I don't need top 15, top 16, but I can't have 30th in points per game, which, they average 17 points per game, or 30th in total yardage, whatever the number was. That's a no-no. No way, no how. It has to be in the higher 20s, like 20 or the lower, whatever you want to call it, lower or higher, whatever. So 21, 22, maybe 19, 20, whatever that looks like, because that's showing growth. And you have a rookie quarterback, so that's why I'm like, I can't have you higher, like, oh, I need top 15. That's just not a fair expectation. But top 21, top 22, oh, I can have that. Because technically, if you're 21, you're the bottom third, but you have to like the tip of the bottom third. So like you can be from the bottom third to the middle third. You know what I'm saying? And you have the top third. So you can be in that. If you can be in that middle, great. If you're right at that tip of the bottom, cool. Let's get past that and get into that middle tier. Then hopefully eventually by year 3, you're in that top 10 range by year 3. But that's where I'm at, right? I need to see, because last year the only thing that we really saw that was really good was the Texans on was Dameon Pierce, Laramie Tunsil, Titus Howard, Cooks from time to time, but he's not here anymore, and the secondary. and Jerry Hughes
Yeah.
and Malik Collins. That's it. That was literally it. Like I just listed like maybe like 7 things that was good to watch last year. So I think that's where all of this starts. I want to see some creativity on offense. No more, the predictability. I'm cool with that. Now, there'll be time where things are kind of obviously, again, technically it's only pass or run. So you do have a 50% chance to guess, but in terms of predictability of like where avoid where CJ is just in no man's land, right? Like you just patting the ball, has nowhere to go. Like I want to see some creativity to scheme guys open. Now, granted, that falls a little bit more on Bobby, but D'Amico still has a big impact on that too.
That's what I was about to ask about, because a lot of offensive things you mentioned, and we're all hoping for better things. We're hoping that the new quarterback's going to do that, that Bobby Slowick's going to do that. I do wonder what kind of a role D'Amico is going to have with the Texans offense, because I think it is simplistic to say, oh, well, he's a defensive-minded coach. He's going to stay away from the offense. Is there something that he picked up as a defensive mind with a totally different perspective on the offense that unlocks something out of Bobby Slowick, that unlocks something out of CJ Stroud? That's what I'm curious about, because I think you have to look at it from that perspective. And sometimes you can screw up when you go about it that way. I think that's what the Patriots did last year when they were like, hey, we're going to move a defensive-minded head coach, defensive coordinator of the past, Matt Patricia, over to the offensive side of things. You have that guy in total charge of the offense. Okay, it's probably not going to work out so well. But I am curious as to what maybe D'Amico Ryans can unlock from Bobby Slowick, because I imagine D'Amico, as a guy who has played in the league and also seen his fair share of defenses, has some pretty good ideas as far as maybe what works for an offense against today's defenses. And to peel back another layer, talk about Matt Burke and the conversation CJ Stroud supposedly had with him in OTAs. Everyone was hyping up so much. Oh my God, because curious CJ Stroud is. That's from an offensive perspective. I know we're going to act like D'Amico's not going to have much to do with the offense this year, but I am curious as to what kind of input he'll have, because he does seem like he is a very collaborative person that wants to be a part of all of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the misconception sometimes we get with defensive-minded head coaches is we act like they have very little input onto what the offense does. They have a big impact on what the offense does, because when they're hiring the coordinators, and again, like when they all meet to game plan, you think the offensive coordinator is game planning by himself? No, he's game planning. The head coaches and the offensive coordinator is game planning together. It's a whole collaborative effort to come up with a game plan. I think we get this misconception that defensive coaches can't develop young quarterbacks, even though in reality, like we have enough evidence to show that defensive guys can. Some guys miss, just like offensive guys can, but a lot of offensive guys miss. You know what I'm saying, in terms of developing quarterbacks. So it's not one size fits all. You kind of want your head coach to be an overseer of everything. Because do you want? I mean, I remember Adam Gase. He had nothing to do with the defense. He just focused solely on the offense. The offense still stunk. So, like you feel me? Like it doesn't really that's just me. So that's just kind of my approach that I think that D'Amico is gonna have. He should have big input. I mean, Bill Belichick, he had big input on the offense last year. That's why they went with the two head offensive coordinator system. And the same with Brian Flores last year in Miami. He had 2 offensive coordinators calling plays, things of that nature. Like defensive-minded coaches, they still have a very big input into how they want the offense to look. That's why sometimes you see a lot of offensives on the defensive-minded coaches be like, all right, we're going to protect the ball, we're going to run the ball.
Yeah, conservative, exactly.
Yeah. Like you think most offensive coordinators want head coaching jobs. And how do you get head coaching jobs? By slinging that rock around across the field. That's how you got it. Yeah, exactly. But like we see a lot of times that's the input. Like, hey, this is what we want to do this week. So yeah, no, like D'Amico's have a big hand in the offense. As you should. You're the head freaking coach. You better have a big impact, a big heavy hand on your offense. Because again, if your offense is good, you'll get fired. Like we've seen long enough that like you can get by with like a mediocre defense. But if your offense is unwatchable, like the owner is more likely to fire you, mainly because if you're putting up points, but the defense stinks, now we're probably there. We just gotta make a couple changes. But if the defense is good, but the offense stinks, it's like now it's a bad watch
Yeah.
for the owners. And that's why like
Yeah.
owners are more likely to pull the plug
Mhm.
if the offense stinks, because if the offense stinks, people don't want to show up anymore, things of that nature. Like, you know how that goes. So
The nature of Ryan's impact on the offense, that is a wild card, but there will be some. To go back to the first part of your answer, though, where I'm looking for success out of D'Amico Ryans, it isn't even really with all of the defensive pieces that he has, because there are still some limits to the talent, specifically on
yeah,
the front seven side of things. We'll see what
yeah,
Will Anderson is. We'll see if Jerry Hughes can do what he was doing in the first half of last year. We'll
yeah,
see if Christian Harris can last the full season. The new
yeah,
linebackers, how they'll fit in. The defensive lineman, the new one, Sheldon Rankins, how they'll fit in. For me, though, can the young players improve? We have talked a lot about Derek Stingley on this show. Derek Stingley, year 1 to year 2, it is hugely important for
yeah,
there to be a big jump on the field, not just in what we're seeing in OTAs and in
yeah,
training camp. And then off of that, Will Anderson, I think you got to temper your expectations. I would specifically look at Jalen Petrie. How much better can Jalen Petrie be? And I do think that brings us into something, DJ, that we saw from Jalen Waddle,
right,
Dolphins wide receiver, when we played the Texans in a game that was one of the worst of the season with
yeah.
Kyle
That
Allen under
one
center.
was so bad.
It was awful. I fell asleep in the first half. I was dealing with food poisoning. It wasn't fun.
That one
But
was
in
so
that
bad.
game, Jalen Petrie impressed Jalen Waddle enough. He was all over the place. Not enough people talk about him. That's where I'm looking for continued development. D'Amico Ryans, we hear about what he is as a leader of men. He talks about how he wants to coach these guys not only on the field, off the field too. But as a coach, what is a guy that's played the game very recently going to be able to teach to young defensive players? That
Yeah,
I said, I think how we'll grade him this coming season.
yeah, I agree. I mean, as you said, like, like he has, especially in the second, he has the pieces.
Mhm.
Like I can, like Derek is all about football. Like Derek, well, I mean, Derek's all about football. I mean, Derek is truly all about football. Like, you're not gonna catch Derek out partying all the time. You're not gonna catch Derek out on the scene. Derek goes to practice, goes home, plays Madden, and that's that. Like sometimes he'll hang out with friends, but like Derek's all about football. Same with Jalen. Jalen's all about football too. Like, so you have two young pieces that are all about football, that have immense talent, paired with Jimmy Ward, who again is a pro's pro. He's been around for over a decade, played in the system, so he could be the coach on the field. You have Desmond King, you got Shaquille Griffin. So you have Tyree Thomas. You have all the pieces you need in that secondary, period, to make everything work, to make everything click. You could build the secondary, like, because the Patriots, they do a lot of this. Sometimes they'll build the defense from the back to the front. The Bills have done that. The Bills did that a little bit, where they build it from the back to the front. So like this year might be the year where they build it back to the front, where they're kind of relying on their secondary to play well enough to, in coverage, to hold up long enough to give their D-line enough time to get to the quarterback. It was a thing that Robert Saleh always would say, like, in this defense, we want to make the quarterback hitch. So once we show them a coverage pre-snap, then after then post-snap we show them something different, and then mainly on third downs, and then we can get that quarterback to hitch. Then now we have to sack him. We have to get to him, because the secondary at that point, they did their job, right? Because in NFL, if the quarterback's holding it, they're going to probably get sacked. That's why most of the quarterbacks that lead the league in time to throw, like Justin Fields, I think Zach Wilson was up there. A lot of people, like usually younger quarterbacks, they lead the league in that, because they're still trying to figure out how to read defenses. So while they're trying to read defenses and learn how to do that, sometimes they hold the ball when they get fooled, and that's when your defense has to come and produce and make sacks. So I can already see D'Amico having it from back to front. Even though he wants to make it front and back, but sometimes you don't have the horses to do this. You don't have the horses to do that. And as a young and good, adaptive coach, you might have to realize that and scheme it a little bit differently. Just tinker it a little bit. But I think as long as D'Amico, as you said, like, can help those guys take that next step, especially in that secondary, because again, those are high draft picks. So
Yeah.
that's what you bring. That's what you're brought in to do to bring the best out of them. Because if those guys turn into Pro Bowl caliber players, now you're just stacking up the roster with blue chip type guys, and now you can fill in between with quality vets, and now that's when you have a really good roster. The majority of rosters in the league, outside of like Philadelphia, they have Pro Bowls everywhere. Majority of the good rosters in the league, they're good at like the premium positions, and they fill everything else in with quality players. So
One of the things you mentioned a moment ago too is another part I think of where D'Amico Ryans could particularly shine, and I think it's thanks to the fact that he's a younger coach.
right.
I think we're getting away from guys that are so married to their scheme that they don't look for ways to innovate. But as you were saying, the Patriots building from the back to front. You take a look at New England's defense this year. There's just like a bunch of guys who can all play safety and linebacker,
Yeah,
and it's
facts.
just right weird. It's weird,
Right.
and I mean, we'll see how it works this coming season. I know a lot of the uh, NFL film junkies out there are excited about it. I'm cautiously optimistic about it. What can D'Amico Ryans do using that bevy of resources that he has in the secondary? And at the same time, too, how the hell is he going to create a pass rush? Because he's going to have to figure out a way to do it.
Right.
And I know you got Will Anderson. I know you have Jerry Hughes. What can you do with the remaining guys? And
Mhm.
obviously, we're not expecting these guys to be like what you have and the Eagles' defensive line, where they have so many guys that you know by name, and they just drafted Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
You have to make the most of what you
And
can. You
Nolan
have to
Smith.
find a way to make chicken salad out of chicken you know what. And I think that's for me, if he's able to make something work, MacGyver together something,
Mhm.
then that's awesome, even if the wins don't come with it. But I think we're both on the same page in that we look at this AFC South and we look at the Texans schedule, and we do think that 5.5 they can do over. How many games over? Who knows? But I think 6-7 is definitely doable.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I'm really interested to see, right? Because this year I'm looking at NFL next gen stats right now. Last year, the Niners were, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think 12 or 13 or 11, one of the three. But they were in that range in terms of blitz percentage. So I'm really interested to see like if D'Amico sticks to that. And actually, like in terms of lowest, right? Like the lowest, it's the third lowest was his master, I guess you could say, and Robert Saleh, right? His the guy that taught him a lot of that defense. He had the third lowest blitz percentage because they had a really good D line. So I'm really interested to see how D'Amico adapts his scheme to like his personnel, right?
Yeah.
Does he like week one try to rely on just the front four and hope for the best, or does he try to like become blitz happy and see if he can make something shade? Because sometimes it's kind of based on like what your personnel is. So I think I want to say I got to double check. I'm looking at it right now. I think in 2021, just looking at, cause I mean, obviously I have to cross reference with Salah because again, like it's the same exact scheme from everybody
Pretty
that I've
much.
talked to about that. I remember in 2021, I'm looking at it right now in terms of blitz percentage, highest. Yeah, it looks like the Jets blitzed a lot. Let me see. Yeah. They blitzed. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They were ninth highest in blitz percentage because they didn't have Carl Lawson got hurt, so all they really had was Quentin Williams. They have John Franklin Myers. John Franklin Myers is a really good. He's a really good player. Pass rushing isn't necessarily his main bag. He's just a really good defensive end, like all around. But yeah, they were ninth highest. So I'm really interested to see how D'Amico adapts his
Yeah.
scheme towards his personnel. And you mentioned you made a really good point. He's a young coach, so he's not necessarily like married to this is how we do it. That is that, right? Where some coaches they're like that. Like Brian Flores is a guy that's okay. We're gonna play man. We're gonna blitz a lot, and that's that. That's how we're coming. Period. So some guys, they'll kind of adapt it based on to their personnel. Like I think the Patriots are kind of in that mode where like they're just kind of adapting to what they have. So yeah, like it's gonna be really interesting to see what D'Amico does.
The things you mentioned about the blitzing, that I am intrigued by that. And I mean, Pete Carroll's defense is different than Robert Saleh's, only slightly. And I would imagine D'Amico Ryan's will be slightly different too. And I mean, this was largely just because of the lack of pass rush that they had.
Right.
But you go
Right.
back to the 2020 season when they had just gotten Jamal Adams and traded all that they did for Jamal Adams. They
Right.
blitzed Jamal Adams a lot. And I got to say, Jamal Adams as a blitzer was a freak of nature. Everything
Yeah.
else defensively, yeah, there are some
Right.
things to be desired. But,
Right.
when you have two guys that have a little bit of safety in them, in Jimmy Ward, who's also played a little bit of nickel, and also
Yep.
in Jalen Petrie, who flies through the football, I'm very curious as to how they use those two guys. And if maybe they look at them and say, hey, these are guys that we can send blitzing from time to time. Which guy it is, it's going to vary from down to down.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if like they ever do, because you mentioned like Jalen. Jalen basically was a linebacker in college. He was a linebacker in nickel. Like he played a little bit of deep, but he was more like he played a little bit, but he was more like in that front 7-ish range, just being a playmaker. I'll be really interested to see like if they're like like third down, like third and like 9 or 10-ish situations where they put Jalen in the nickel, not a nickel, but put him at linebacker while having Jimmy Ward deep, while having Desmond King in that nickel spot or like in that safety spot, while also having what's his face, Tyvier on the field. That's how talented in my eyes secondary is. You can get extremely creative, talented and versatile. You can get creative and like try a lot of things. So like you can basically go to a dime package. And to be honest, like that's one set up that's always not always. I have to look at the numbers, but that's given Lamar Jackson some problems throughout his career. Is like when you put a lot of DBs on the field and you kind of like blitz and things of that nature with those DBs, or just let them play, regular defense or whatnot. Because obviously, what makes Lamar Jackson so dynamic and he can still, break one is that under Greg Roman, you had to go big to match up when the Ravens went big. So like when they go like 22 personnel with like 2 tight ends, 2 backs or whatever, so you had to go big. So when they run some of those creative read options, things of that nature, you get Lamar on the edge where it's a linebacker trying to chase him instead, like 3 linebackers trying to chase him instead of a bunch of DBs. Cause I remember that Chargers game, they had like 6 defensive backs on the field the majority of the game, which kind of gave Lamar Jackson some issues. And I remember that Dolphins game in Miami where they had a bunch of DBs on the field, and they just blitzed them all game. And they didn't really have an answer for the cover 0 stuff. So, I'm really interested to see like what D'Amico can, is gonna, kind of, we kind of went way out to week 1, but I'm really interested to see what he does in that capacity.
Development, creativity defensively, and an impact on the offense. These are the things that we're looking for D'Amico Ryans this coming year, and what will define success for him.
Yep.
NFL.com's Adam Rank put together a very detailed write-up as a preview for the Texans going into this year. I encourage you to check it out. It's a lot
really
of work that he put into it. And there's a tidbit at the very bottom that caught DJ's eye. It's this. One storyline people shouldn't overlook. Dameon Pierce could be a certified star. Pierce put up nearly 1,000 rushing yards in 13 games as a rookie before his season was ultimately ended by a sprained ankle. His pass catching, 30 grabs for 165 yards and a touchdown, not impressive, but it's hard to hold that against him given the lack of production around him in Houston last year. He could end up carrying more of the load with offseason signee Devin Singletary, but even so, a leap to the next level could be in line for Pierce under Bobby Slowick, Texas offensive coordinator, who saw firsthand how the 49ers get the most out of Christian McCaffrey and really many other running backs. But McCaffrey may be the most talented of all those guys, at least based off of where he was drafted. You saw that. I think we're both on the same page in that we like Dameon Pierce a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about the idea of a running back really being a star, which is a very subjective word in 2023, especially with the addition, as Rank mentioned, of a Devin Singletary. And of course, with the way that Pierce plays, which is why we all love him. Runs violently, doesn't want to go down.
Right.
Pierce is a star in the NFL, though, DJ Bien-Aime. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, he had like 1,100 yards. Like I think he finished second amongst rookies in scrimmage yards last year, and was like top 30 in the entire NFL. And he missed like 3 games. Like Dameon Pierce was on pace to I think he was on pace to hit. I want to say 1,200 yards rushing, because again, like he got hurt in week 13. He could have came back, but they still had, I believe, Chiefs game, Titans game, Colts game, and the Jags game. So they still have 4 more games to go. He got hurt in week 14. Yeah, week 13. So there's still 4 games to go. So like he was already at 900. He was it wasn't like he was at 901. Like he was basically almost at 1,000 already. He was like the only piece of the offense that was, from a skills player standpoint, was enjoyable outside of him and Brandon Cooks when Brandon Cooks and Davis were on the same page. So like, I absolutely think in this scheme that has gotten the best out of running backs from year to year to year. Like it's insane the track record for this offense with running backs. From you can go all the way back to Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan's father.
Yeah,
What he did in Denver with
Mike Anderson, Orlando Scary, Ruben Drowens, so many random
yeah,
running backs.
like Terrell Davis was
Terrell
a Hall of
Davis, yeah.
Famer. Yeah, like and then when he went to Washington, Clinton Portis, he made things work. And then Alfred Morris, his first every year as a 6th-round pick out of FAU, I think led the league in rushing or was like top 2. Because I believe he had 1,400 yards rushing. Like this scheme has been proven that if you understand how to read your blocks and you trust what the coaches are trying to tell you to do, you're gonna put up crazy numbers. You know what I'm saying? So he had 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns as a rookie out of FAU as a 6th-round pick. 1,600 yards, like that's bananas. You feel me? So I absolutely think Dameon Pierce can take another step in this offense, like another step in the sense like, oh, we're looking at a top 10 running back. And I'm not really too worried about his style of play, mainly because he doesn't have that many miles on his tires because he was splitting carries at Florida. That's why he ran in the 4th round. Obviously, he played a lot more. He went higher. Ugh. Yeah. So like I think Dameon Pierce can absolutely become a star. I think he'll probably be the Texas best skill player in 2023.
There.
And there could be a case at the end of the year. He was the Texas best offensive player, just depending on like how much of a step he takes. Even though I think Laramie Tunsil is like a top 2 left tackle. So that's where it gets a little tricky in terms of like the best offensive player because Laramie is top 2. If let's say Laramie's all pro, like Dameon Pierce basically has to be the best running back in the league to be better than Laramie at, you compare apples to apples. But regardless, though, I think that Dameon Pierce, along with Devin Singletary, they're so vital to the development of CJ in year 1. Because we'll talk about this later, with D'Amico alluding to, this receiving core is going to surprise people. Obviously, we'll discuss that a little bit. But I think regardless, like if Dameon Pierce, along with Singletary, but Dameon mainly can do what he did last year at a more efficient rate, then that's going to open up everything for everybody else. Like truly open up everything for everybody. Because that's what was supposed to happen last year, right? You had Dameon running like a madman, and that was supposed to make the passing lanes a lot easier for Davis, passing lanes a lot easier for Cooks, for Nico, for Jordan for Jordan the tight end. So that just didn't happen. And some of that, obviously falls on Pep from not being able to marry the run game and the pass game together so it can always look the same. That's really the goal. You always want to make everything try to look the same or have people guessing, right. Make them one step slower so you can fit the pass where you need to go. So I'm really interested. I think those two, Dameon and Devin, but mainly Dameon, are the key to unlocking the offense.
Pierce can be a star, and I think the big obstacle in his way is whether or not he gets hurt. Yeah. Because of how he runs. And look, maybe he will be fine. As you said, you're right. Did not get a lot of work at Florida. That is my only holdup because I hate this idea that all running backs are replaceable. Pierce has a motor to him that is rare to find in NFL players, let alone running backs. He is violent. He wants to hit people. He runs through people. He shakes them off. Like that is very hard to find. The only weakness to this point has been he puts the ball on the ground a little bit. But I think it's possible. And to what you were saying too, DJ, with Bobby Slowick involved, finally, the poor guy has some help. I mean, Davis Mills is your quarterback. The passing game ain't helping you. The offensive line is what it was up the middle last year.
Right.
Scott Quessenberry and AJ Can and Kenyon Green struggling.
Right.
It's better this year. By default, you think with Drew Scruggs as a rookie center and with Shaq Mason in and hopefully a better version of Kenyon Green this coming season. And on top of that, CJ Stroud, and on top of that, a new offensive coordinator. Like, all of the things are there for him to have, I think, a monster season. I just hope he's healthy for all 17 games in a league that treats running backs like absolute crap.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to draft Dameon Pierce on my team.
I'm going to try
mainly,
to.
Yeah, mainly because again, like he's going to get the rock a good amount of times, and we saw what he did last year. Behind, as you mentioned, like I would say like it was like an average offensive line, but now it should be better.
Especially on the interior,
right? Kenyon Green year two should be better. Juice should be an upgrade over at the center position. Shaq should be an upgrade over AJ Cann. Obviously, Laramie and Titus are it's a top 5 tackle duo in the whole NFL. So, and also Dalton Schultz is.
Oh yeah, got a tight end.
Yeah, right. I mean, for what it's worth, OJ Howard and Jordan, they were very good blocking tight ends. Like I'm not gonna besmirch that,
but you didn't get much of pass production out of those guys.
Right. So you're gonna replace, you're replacing both of those guys with Dalton Schultz. But again, like Dalton Schultz is a pretty good blocker too. He's an effective blocker. So I'm drafting Dameon Pierce mainly because why not?
Right.
And again,
how long do you wait in the draft is my question, because we both.
I think you can wait a little bit because he plays for the Texans.
That's true. The league that I'm in with Houston friends, I don't think I'm going to be able to get away with.
Oh, no.
But the league that I'm in with people that don't live in Houston, I'm going to wait as long as I can.
Yeah, what? Yeah, you go. Yeah. I mean, the thing is though, like, where is his ranking in terms of projection for
that? I don't know.
Fantasy,
right?
Because like, let's say hypothetically, it's like they expect them to like be like the 10th best running back. You probably can't wait to the 10th round to get him. You know what I'm saying? Like you for sure can't wait.
The thing that helps you out is the lack of catches he had last season, because he only had 30 catches for 165 yards. If he had like 50 for like 400, okay, then we're perhaps talking about a different story here. But he had less than 1,000. Like, there's a lot of things that help you out. It's just a matter of, okay, how far can he slip? So I would imagine you probably want to take him by round 4, round 5, just because generally running backs, like the bell cow kind of guys, are really hard to find.
Very hard to find.
Right.
Very hard to find.
But he is one. Theoretically.
I'm looking at my friend Field Yates. I'm looking at his running back rankings. All right, so I'm looking at the entire thing. So the majority have him in like that 17 to 22-ish range. Ooh. So it's between him, it's him, Michael Clay, Matt Bowen. Like, that's kind of where they have it. So So I mean, you can low-key wait.
You buy low.
Yeah, like the overall average is 20th. You can low-key wait a little bit. Yeah, no, you can wait a little bit, because it's all about what fantasy. It's all about value. It's all about because if you draft Pierce like second round, like you just pass him and possibly getting like Tyreek Hill.
Exactly.
That's bad. That's bad team building. Where did you finish in your fantasy league last year?
Well, with the ones that I went to college with, who are all I think on top of it, not very well. Wasn't last, but wasn't far from last. It was a rough year. We have a 2 quarterback league, and I know no one cares about your fantasy team, but I drafted Justin Herbert, and I was kind of screwed from the beginning, and Aaron Rodgers. Those were my 2 quarterbacks.
That
was it.
I think for mine, I had my friends from college. We had a two quarterback league. I think I had Tua, Justin Fields, and somebody else. I forgot who else.
Oh man, so you got killed by injuries.
Yeah, I got killed by injuries. Yeah, I got at times. But Justin and Tua were most of the time they weren't injured at the same time. So
there you go. At least
pass by. But my money league, I lost in the final round, the championship round, because I started Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I started Trevor Lawrence over Daniel Jones. I lost.
Oh no!
I started Trevor Lawrence over Daniel Jones when Trevor played when Trevor played the Texans in Houston. Remember, Trevor was done playing by like the third quarter.
Yep.
And he threw a pick in that game. He didn't throw any touchdowns, anything like that. Like, oh my God, I missed out on like $700.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah,
all right. We got one last topic that is also somewhat fantasy football related. You will probably not be selecting a Houston Texans wide receiver in your fantasy draft unless it's like really, really, really late and you're hoping to get some sort of like sleeper keeper potential with Nico Collins or something like that. But D'Amico Ryans, head coach of the Houston Texans, was on the flagship station of the Houston Texans, and he thinks that the Houston Texans wide receivers will surprise a lot of people, saying, quote, I'm not concerned with where we are with our wide receivers. I like our group. I like where we are. We have a lot of talented guys with a lot of different qualities. Nico Collins, the big guy with the best hands. Robert Woods, the veteran, consistent day in, day out. Tank Dell comes in, providing his route running ability. He's been open a lot in OTAs. So that's exciting. Obviously, D'Amico's not going to come out and say, yeah, these guys all suck. He's not going to do that. That said, most people would respectfully disagree with D'Amico Ryan's assessment. I know that Bill Barnwell had the Texans skill group 32nd of 32 teams in the league. I think a lot of people have them at the least in the bottom 5 of the NFL.
Right.
Do you believe these wide receivers can surprise a lot of people? Maybe we both are saying no to this. And what would surprise, I guess, given the limitations of this group?
Can they surprise? Sure. Will they surprise? I'm not sure. Mainly because like most times when people have these projections about about receiver groups, like people are usually spot on, right? Because people can like it's easier to evaluate a receiver group with your eyes versus like other positions like offensive line or linebacker group and things of that nature. I mean, the receiving group again,
100.
as we said, like they based on the 2022 production, they're like 28th or lower, or lower in every categories from receiving yards, receiving touchdowns to yards after the catch. Like the list goes on and on and on. I do, so I think that's kind of why I was like, I wouldn't bet CJ Stroud to win Rookie of the Year because again, like unless like Robert Woods he reverts back to his old self, it's the only way like he has a shot, or like Nico takes like a massive leap. So like, what would surprise look like? Surprise would look like Robert Woods or Nico takes a big leap, or Robert Woods returns back to his LA Rams form, paired with like again like Tank, or John Mechie making a legitimate impact throughout the season. And it's just again like hard to pencil that in. That's kind of like more wait and see because with John Mechie, he tore his ACL. It's almost like people only talk about the cancer. People also forget that he tore his ACL at the end of his college career, right? So you had that. So he last played football in 2021. He tore his ACL, was coming back. Then obviously he had cancer. I believe he should be back for training camp. They've all told us he should be back for training camp. But again, like he hasn't played football almost 24 months. You know what I'm saying? Right. That's just a hard ask. Tank Dell, year one for a miniature guy, that's tough, right? Like if you look at I forgot what website it is, but you could basically like put a player in and they'll give you the athletic profile. I think it's like the R something chart, something like that. I forgot what it's called, but a lot of people use just to see what your athletic, what the athletic chart looks like, and they give you a player comp, and his player comp was Tutu Atwell, who dealt with injuries his first year because he was just a small guy. He was literally the exact same build as Tank. Tank and Tutu are like mirror images of how they both came out. Granted, they're both they're the same size. They played the position vastly different. Tutu was more like, I don't use the word gadget, but he was more like, just give me the ball in space and I'm gonna make things happen, which he did a lot at Louisville. He was like their big play guy. So was Tank, but Tank had a more refined route tree. I think Tutu would have had a better route tree if he was in a better system coming out of Louisville, because Louisville under Scott Satterfield, he just like they didn't develop receivers for whatever reason, based on like the things that they asked him to do. So Tank has a better route tree, but again, like at his size, the only players to at that size like have legitimate success is Taylor Gabriel. I think his best season ever was like 700 yards receiving. Now if you get that year one, great, like that's fantastic. But again, like it's hard to expect somebody to do that when they have those odds stacked against him year one. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Tank could develop into a quality starter, things of that nature. I think he for sure develop into that. But again, like year one, that's a lot to ask. You know, I'm really big on not putting too much expectations on players, you know? So,
Yeah. Especially as a rookie. It's so
yeah,
hard for rookies to pick up NFL offenses, and I'm imagining that there's gonna be a degree of complications just given that it's a, uh, Kyle Shanahan offense, and Kyle
yeah,
Shanahan offenses are beautiful in that they are simple and that there's a lot of plays that look the same, and they'll just run the same plays over from different looks over and over again, but for
right.
any wide receiver coming into the league, it is very difficult, especially coming from what they maybe were with at college, and you mentioned Tutu Atwell a moment ago. Definitely from a size comparison, a lot more similar, especially from a weight. What I'm hoping
Mhm.
is that the Texans can use a Tank Dell in the same way that Rondale Moore got used by the Arizona Cardinals when he first came into the league. 5'7", 181, so he's a little bit sturdier, but
Yeah,
still similar size, fast. That's I hope what you get out of him. But if we're getting the wide receiver group as a whole to surprise, it really is about Nico Collins taking the jump that we thought he could take from year one to year two that he did not really last year. I think that can be blamed on Davis Mills, and it's about Robert Woods being Robert Woods again. If Robert
right.
Woods is Robert Woods again, a lot of questions are going to get answered here.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah,
tend to
yeah.
believe he probably isn't the same guy, especially given the way that Tennessee whined about him last season, people that covered the team and people the way that they talked about him when he signed with the Texans and stuff. Maybe it's not going to happen again, but if they are surprising, it's I think largely going to be because Robert Woods was able to tap into something that he used to be when he was one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's more likely that Robert reverts versus Nico taking that 1,000-yard step. Not that I don't think Nico can. I think Nico can based on what we've seen from OTAs, but again, it's just OTAs.
Mhm.
And he'll tell you that, like, you know, OTAs is just OTAs. Like, you got to do it when it matters. But yeah, if Robert reverts back and then you also get like a sizable leap from Nico now, you know, you're in a much better spot. And like, that's a legitimate surprise. You know what I'm saying? And like, they're going to have to carry CJ early on because CJ, again, like, CJ is going from playing with Chris Olave, JSN, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harris Jr., and I mean, no, Justin played with J-Mo. But regardless, like, that's who he played with. Like, that's who he played with.
Are they good?
You tell me. People think Marvin Harrison Jr. is like the best prospect since like Calvin Johnson at receiver. I don't agree. I think the best prospect since Calvin is probably either Julio or Jamar Chase. But yeah, like that's what he's gonna have to do. So that's what he's gonna do. So the group is going to have to carry CJ early on because he's going to be adjusting from having
100%.
my guys win no matter what to like, oh, I'm about to throw some guys open. So like they're gonna do the part to make his life easier.
It's going to be a steep uphill climb for these wide receivers to surprise. Not saying it's impossible. I think we're both in agreement here, though. It's going to be hard, and Bobby Slowick, that's going to be his biggest challenge is finding the ways to maximize these guys.
Yep. So
He is DJ Bien-Aime. I am Paul Gallant. This was the Talkin Texans podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We've already done 11, DJ. We're almost to actual football.
right, wow, we've done this without actual football happening. So
The entire time.
the entire time.
The entire time.
So once
We've only
football
got
gets going,
3 weeks till training camp? 3 weeks?
wow, that's crazy. Less than 3
Time
weeks.
flies when you're having fun.
It's
That's
actually less than that because you know my girlfriend has in her thing that 19 days until she takes the bar. If she takes the bar, like the second day she takes the bar is the first day of training camp.
There we go.
Or
We're
the second day,
close.
one of the two. Yeah, so we're there. It's less than that. So
It's football time in Houston, as Clay Walker famously sings. Do you like that song?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, good. Oh. When football season starts, DJ, I'm going to sing this to you.
Clay Walker. Who is that?
Well, he's been canceled for yelling at a bus driver recently. However, if you have ever been to NRG Stadium, you've heard it. You just haven't known you've heard it yet. Or if you ever worked at the flagship station for a decade, you heard it.
He yelled at a bus driver. What was the reason though? Because like sometimes it's okay to yell at. I'm not saying it's okay to yell at a bus driver, but
you know what?
A lot of weird things happen on public transportation. That's all I'm saying.
I'm with you there, but I think this is a private bus driver, DJ, and I think the fact that the guy was recording it in the background shows you that maybe Clay Walker's done this a couple of times before. But it's almost football time in Houston. Oh, we're ready to play.
That's how it sounds? Oh, no, yeah. I've never heard that before in my life. Keep that away from my ears.
This has been the Talkin Texans podcast. Y'all have yourselves a wonderful day.